So in today's video, I'm actually going to be going over something that we discussed in my RA9 discussion stream recently, and we basically went over an idea that I keep seeing kind of popping up everywhere, especially in my comment section. But this idea essentially assumes or presupposes that Resident Evil 9 is somehow going to be a conclusion slash an end of an era. So I am going to be attacking this idea, since it is worth noting that one of the major issues with this presupposition slash assumption slash speculation is that there's no evidence to kind of support this, right? So Capcom has not stated anywhere officially that this is going to be the case. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but that seems to be the case, right? So, and just so you guys know, I am planning on doing more of these RA9 discussions as we get closer to RA9's release, but thank you to everybody that stopped by. But anyways, let's get started with the video. Brandon says, I think you'll definitely see some of the legacy characters on Requiem. Everything Capcom is pushing, this is the end or an era. I imagine this is equivalent to Final Fantasy, is that 9? Change is coming. Well, that's only if you're using the presupposition of believing what Dusk has said about that, because to my knowledge, the characters, the devs have never stated that this is kind of the end. Or did they say an end of an era? I'm pretty sure the only thing I've heard is from Dusk. And if that's where you're getting your information from, then no, I definitely disagree, right? We don't know if that's going to happen. So as I just stated, this does seem to be an idea that actually stems from that infamous leaker known as Dusk Golem / Aesthetic Gamer. Now, for those of you that don't know, this is a leaker that's actually been around for a very long time. I recently had a discussion in my comment section with the guys over at Resident Evil Wiki. They were telling me that this guy, the first time that they actually saw that he got a false leak was back in 2012, when he suggested that Jill was actually going to be in Resident Evil 6. And it's funny because I actually had no idea that this leaker has been around for that long. You know, spreading false information for that long is kind of wild. So yeah, that was a very interesting conversation. Now, one thing that I definitely wanted to mention about this leaker, and the reason I'm bringing him up is because obviously it ties, it's basically tied to this idea, because it seems like he's the one that stated this. Now, I don't know how far back he stated this, that Resident Evil 9 was going to be a conclusion, is the words that he kind of used. The most recent place that I've actually seen him say this is in a very suspicious tweet that he recently posted. He posted a picture of everything that he remembers that he stated in regards to Resident Evil 9. Did see some mistakes, mostly because he did state that, you know, he was going over like Jill, that Jill was supposed to be in the game, but then that got cut. That's actually a very huge contradiction, because that is not what he's actually stated just a few months ago. He actually forgot that he stated that Jill was actually going to be the main character for Resident Evil 9. So it seems he is doing a bit of revisionist history and changing what he stated to make himself look better. Another issue that kind of arises with this picture of everything that he stated in regards to Resident Evil 9 is that there's no sources. So we can't actually verify if he stated any of this. Now, I did try to kind of go back and see if he stated any of this on Twitter, and I couldn't find it, right? There was a lot of stuff that was missing. So, I mean, one could make the counter argument that he is posting a lot of this stuff on his own Discord, which I'm pretty sure he has. I have seen him tweet that a long time ago. So, you know, I don't know where this is coming from, but I will say it's very kind of poor practice to not source. Like, if you're a leaker, I would be sourcing everything, right? I would be saying, well, I said this back in 2020 that this was going to happen. I said this in 2018 that this was going to happen. But it's worth noting that this guy actually has stated this in the past, that he is a bad leaker. So of course, I'm not expecting him to do that, but I do find it suspicious that he is changing stuff. And what I mean by that is that he did state in that picture something along the lines that Jill was supposed to be the main character. That is in fact not what I've never seen him state that. And if anything, there's evidence that suggests that he's actually making that up, because just at the start of this year, I covered it in a video where he actually forgot. He was complaining on Twitter that he's like, I don't know where these Jill leaks are coming from, that Jill is going to be a protagonist in Resident Evil 9. And then sure enough, a viewer of his, a follower of his, actually called them out and said, bro, you stated this a long time ago, back in 2021 or 2020, and showed a picture basically showing that. And the guy basically he basically doubled down. He said, oh no, but that's changed in development. So that's the only place where he stated that. So, but that was just at the start of this year. So again, it seems like he's doing a lot of that revisionist history. Another thing that we also went over in the previous video that I forgot to mention is that he also made another mistake where he stated that this was back in May of this year. He stated that Resident Evil 9 has always been a third-person game. They've been doing that since the start. And then when it got announced that Resident Evil 9 was actually going to be in first person / third person, he went back and changed. He did that revisionist history again and decided to say that, oh no, Resident Evil 9 was always going to be in first person and in third person, as we went over in that previous video. But going back to the topic of today's video, it seems like the only place that I've seen that where he stated this is going to be a conclusion is just from that recent kind of picture where it states all of the stuff that's going to happen in RE9 that he's stated over the years. But of course, it's not verifiable. By the way, if you guys are enjoying the content and you guys want me to make more of this, then let me know by leaving a like and also sharing the video. Just in case you guys didn't know, I am a very small content creator. And of course, having more subscribers does help me book more interviews like the ones you guys have seen on the channel where I speak to very famous voice actors. It would also help me get more collabs with bigger content creators so we can all hang out while I'm streaming a discussion with them. And it also gets me more invitations to special events so I'm able to cover more stuff for you guys. But anyways, let's get back to the video, and thank you to everyone that's supporting the channel. But anyways, this leads me to my main counter arguments for this idea that Resident Evil 9 is going to be the conclusion or an end of an era. For starters, this idea is incredibly vague, right? And if this guy is a leaker, why didn't he say more to that? Why didn't he just be specific? Oh, it's going to be an end of an era because of this. He doesn't do that. Second, I could also make the counter argument that Resident Evil 6, Resident Evil 7, and Resident Evil 8 have all been a conclusion to the series, right? I mean, Resident Evil 6, for instance, so it's actually the first time where we actually played as 8 characters in a mainline Resident Evil game, you know, not counting, of course, any multiplayer games. One could say that this is a conclusion to the series because even at the end of Resident Evil 6, there is that kind of hidden kind of cutscene where it shows Jake kind of going off and kind of, you know, saving people from bioterrorism incidents. We also had that whole kind of dynamic of Sherry and as well as Jake that Capcom never used. They never reused this ever, even though it seems like that's where Capcom was taking the series next, where we had Sherry and Jake, who were the sons of Birkin and Wesker, right? Both of them have viruses in their system. They're both superhuman. Obviously, that could be considered a conclusion. Next up, we have Resident Evil 7, which of course was a reboot, and they basically took it to full horror, right? That's why one of the reasons why I don't like Resident Evil 7. There's several others. We're not going to get into that. It's a good game, but it's not my favorite. I don't think it should be considered a mainline title in the series, as well as RE6, and as well as RE8. But anyways, that's a topic for a different video. Going back to what I was saying, Resident Evil 7 did a lot of stuff that, you know, seemed to conclude a lot of things. For instance, we didn't have any typewriters anymore. We had like tape recorders, right? There was that whole idea of using a character that was faceless, which, as mentioned, I think that's a very stupid idea. And RE8, right? I mean, RE8, you could also make the same argument that, you know, that faceless character ended up dying. So, you know what I mean? Like, they kind of concluded the Winter Saga in Resident Evil 8. So this idea, this very vague idea that kind of suggests that Resident Evil 9 is going to be a conclusion or an end of an era without stating what it's going to conclude, it doesn't mean anything. If anything, one could make the educated speculation that that is actually going to happen, which, funny enough, is something that this guy, Dusk Golem, aka Aesthetic Gamer, loves to do. So all that to say, it seems like this idea of saying that Resident Evil 9 is going to conclude something, it just seems like it's just an educated speculation. It's also super hard to trust someone that doesn't even remember what he stated in the past in regards to RE9. So that kind of begs the question, do I really trust a guy, a leaker, who doesn't even get stuff right and also likes to do revisionist history to make his leaks seem less wrong? No, I'm definitely not going to be doing that, and I definitely don't think you should either. And as I've stated in my previous video, I don't hate this guy. I just don't respect him. And I think a lot of the community doesn't already, right? I mean, that's why there's so many people that actually do hate him, even though, as I've stated in the past, I don't hate him and neither should you. This guy is just a guy that loves to try to do all of this stuff to get clout. And I have had like maybe 2 or 3 of his cult following go on my videos and state like, you're just hating him. You're hating on him. And it's like, no, I'm not hating on him. Me stating a fact is not hating on anybody. You know what I mean? Like, if anything, a better question is, why do you think that there's so many people that actually hate him? You know what I mean? Like, what did he do? Well, it seems like he's been getting a lot of stuff wrong for many years. But as mentioned, I don't hate him. I don't really care about him. If anything, I'm just kind of stating this and letting people know that this guy is not a reliable leaker. And just FYI, for people that have been in the Resident Evil community for even longer than I have, you guys know that every Resident Evil leak has been complete, trash. 98% of Resident Evil leaks have been complete nonsense. 98% of it. And guess who falls into that 98%? Well, Dusk Golem. Brandon says this game is a requiem, a eulogy to those who came before, director Nakanishi. I see, but that doesn't, if that's what you're using to presuppose, because before you said, I think you'll definitely see some of the legacy, everything's pushing, this is an end of it, or end or of an era is what you meant, I think. So that's not enough of an argument to suggest that would be, that what Nakanishi said, this game is a requiem, that's almost like, that doesn't necessarily mean that this is an end of an era, because technically you could just have a next game with more legacy characters showing up, you know what I mean? So I think you might, sorry, what were you gonna say, Mir?
For me, I also kind of feel like I kind of side with Brandon a little bit. I feel like this is just kind of a little subtle, maybe the old characters are gonna be in this, but again, this is speculation. So
You're saying like maybe the character's gonna die?
No, this game is a requiem, a eulogy to those who came before. If I to put it in into a metaphor, like Leon and Claire and Jill, when they were in Raccoon City, they were like these scared people. Well, scared, they were going through the trauma of Raccoon City, and then after they came out of it, they completely became different people, where they all vowed to take down Umbrella, and I don't know what their motives were after. Well, I do know what their motives were, but it's just hard to
okay.
Like Leon, for example.
Okay, I think I get you.
Was to protect Sherry, So in my eyes, I see it as like, oh, their old selves are dead, but their new selves, they're gonna come back. And I don't know. I'm reading into this, man. I'm reading into this a lot. Their new selves are gonna.
I see.
You feel me? Like I'm not good with words on this, but.
So what you're saying is, because we could look up the definition of requiem, right? Just because it's not a word I use all the time. But I see what you're kind of getting at. You're thinking that Brandon is perhaps suggesting that it's an end of a chapter for the characters because they're going back to like at the start, almost like how stories, they kind of have like a beginning and then it wraps up really nicely for an end. Is that what you mean? Because that would make more sense of what Brandon is why he's saying that. Is that what you mean? Right? I was
kind of trying to find ways to get there, but I couldn't, man.
So an act or a token of remembrance, right? That's what requiem means. I think that's in that. Or it could also be a mass for the repose of the souls of the dead. So almost like, again, a token of remembrance for the dead. But the only problem with this idea, if that's what Brandon was referring to, because at first it seemed like he was referring to what Dusk was saying, which is what he's been saying for months, is that, this is going to be an end of a chapter of Resident Evil, right? Things are going to be different after. And there's nothing really that's kind of suggests that, right? And the only problem though is that if you're saying that, this is going to be going back, that this is going to just tie up nicely and we're never going to see the or where something's going to be finished, that's an end of an era. I mean, that's the words that Brandon used. So that again would kind of, one could ascertain that what he means by that is that things are done, right? There's no more, there's something that's going to end, right? Maybe we won't see a character anymore. We won't see any legacy characters. Maybe it's just going to be the new generation. Kind of like what RE6 was kind of hinting at with Sherry and Jake during the time, but then, Capcom threw that out the window. But if that's the case, or maybe a character dies, that's what I was saying before, right? Is that because there has been some people in the community that have been kind of speculating that characters are going to die, legacy characters. And that's never been the case ever in Resident Evil, right? Where we've had an old legacy character just drop dead, except for, I wouldn't even count Ethan, because Ethan was only part of one game prior, right? Like that's not enough.
The thing that gets me going is I feel like too many times they've wanted to kill off Leon throughout the entire franchise. Like for example, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I might be wrong on this one, Steve from Resident Evil Code Veronica was supposed to be Leon, but then they swapped them out for, you know, they don't want to upset the fans, so then they just made it Steve instead of Leon. That's one instance where they wanted to kill off Leon.
I've never heard of that. Yeah, that's interesting. Or I guess, but that's not enough to say that Leon was going to die, because there again, you're presupposing.
I'm not saying that.
Yeah, because what you're saying is that, oh well, it seems that that's the only bit of evidence that we've had that Leon was going to be in Steve's boots. But if Leon was in the game, that doesn't necessarily mean that they would have gone the same route and had him, you know, get killed. Or if this is Dark Side Chronicles, we would have had Steve's body get taken by Wesker, right? We don't know that.
Yeah.
There's not enough, and also I've never heard that. I mean, that's interesting, but it's not enough of a defense to say that Leon was going to die. And you also said there's multiple times. What other times have there been with Leon almost close to death?
I can't remember. That was the one concrete time I do remember, but I'm actually gonna, by the way, I got this fact from like 5 years ago, and it's always been in my head, but I've never actually talked about it I've talked about it on stream, but I've never told people that it's a concrete fact.
Yeah, I'll give you time to look it up, because that's interesting. I've never heard that, so that'd be pretty cool. But as mentioned, unless we know for a fact that Leon was going to suffer the same fate as Steve, not just that he was going to be in Steve's, like that was going to be the second protagonist, then, you know, but that I would say logically that would kind of make sense that Leon was going to be in RE2. I mean, sorry, RE Code Veronica, just because I always thought, and I mentioned this to Nick Apostolides, I was like, it's so weird that Claire sends a message to Leon to send a message like for help, and then Leon has an email to Chris, even though Claire went to Umbrella Paris to try to find Chris because she didn't have his contact details. Like that's
also crazy to me too. I don't know the timeline between Resident Evil 2 remake, or sorry, Resident Evil 2 and CVX.
6 months.
But I guess Leon,
I think 6 months, yeah.
So yeah, Leon contacted Chris.
Or 3?
With what resources, you know? Like he would be a starting out government official, no? Like I don't know what resources he had to contact Chris. I don't even know if he knew about Chris. Well, I mean, he knew about Chris, but
it's weird that, you know, he would have had to have used some sort of resource. That's a good point. He would have had to have used some sort of CIA or NSA, you know what I mean, like resource to be able to contact Chris, because Claire never had Chris's contact. That's why she physically went to Paris, right? So it's weird. Yeah, it's a very strange. I hope if they ever remake it, that they give us a clear definitive, you know, answer that like Leon got stuff from like the president's, like, I don't know, like tech team or NSA that helped them track down Chris, and we get like a glimpse of that. Or, you know, maybe Chris or maybe Leon could just show up if that was the case, where Leon was supposed to be in Code Veronica. That'd be interesting. So that's kind of what I asked Nick.
I just looked up the Steve and Leon connection. It says it's a popular fan theory. So it wasn't like a fact. Yeah,
I see.
You know, I for so long I've had that thought in my head that I thought it was somewhat true, but you know, it's just a fan theory.
Yeah. So aside from that, though, you don't know of a time where they've actually tried to kill Leon, right? I don't think they would, if I'm being honest. There seems to be a lot of
they
evidence.
Definitely wouldn't.
Okay, well then, yeah, because he's such a popular character, right? It's like him and Chris.
Yeah, what's always funny to me is like the way I see Leon is, I feel like they can't kill Leon. You know, he's just too popular. Leon's the movie poster child. You know, they have him literally every single animated movie. And the way I see Leon is when I was watching The Walking Dead a long time ago, everybody and their mothers loved Daryl Dixon. Everybody. And there are moments where people thought that Daryl Dixon was going to die. Everybody will always tweet it out. Like, if they kill, like, too many people tweeted and talked about, like, if they kill Daryl Dixon, we're not going to watch the show. And so part of me thinks that, like, because people like that character, Daryl Dixon, so much, they never killed him off. It's the same way with Leon. They love Leon so much that they're just never going to kill him off, you know? Like, you can't. You're just going to piss off the community, you know?
Yeah, and I think that's why Capcom has never done that specifically, right? I mean, and if Capcom is obviously looking at other stuff that's like other media, like you brought up Last of Us 2 before, right? that's a game that I played once and I never played again just because the story was complete crap. Like it was complete nonsense. But one of the points, the reason I'm bringing that up is because Joel dies in that one, right? And so that was huge, especially when it got leaked, as you mentioned, right? That was a huge, kick in the face to the fans where they were like, why would you kill Joel? And I think that's after they did that, that's where the whole story just went out the window, right? But which led me to not be a Last of Us fan anymore, right? Like if they make a Last of Us 3, a Last of Us 4, I don't care. I'm literally done. Like that's like they ruined it. They literally ruined it. So, and I think Capcom is very aware, they are very aware. And with other stuff that's happening, or even stuff that's happening in the community, we're going to be going over there. Click this video right here if you guys want to see my RE9 theory video, and click this one right here if you guys want to see my full discussion with Mayor Munoz. By the way, make sure to go check him out. He's also a fellow Resident Evil YouTuber as well as a fellow Capcom creator. And thank you so much for watching.